you are in your 30s and if you have not begun your investment as yet, probably this is the video for you. We will try to devise a plan so that you can proceed this journey as quickly as it can, right? So before I make out a strategy for how you can approach this process of investment, I think there are certain prerequisites which you need to fulfill right at this juncture. Number one, the prerequisite which you necessarily should have is called an insurance. Investment is something which is made usually for growing your wealth, but before you go on to the process of growing your wealth, I think you should take up an insurance plan. That is a life insurance plan, and the life insurance which you can consider obviously is a term insurance. Term insurance is something in which you pay a very little amount of premium to achieve a maximum coverage for your life insurance, right? So life insurance is meant for for the situation when something happens to you and all the financial obligations of your family will be borne by the insurance coverage that you have bought for them. So go for the term insurance. The first thing that you necessarily should have is to go for a term insurance. Secondly, since you are in your 30s, you may at any moment be afflicted, God forbid, you may at any moment be afflicted with some sort of ailment or disease. So disease is something which requires a lot of money and as well as a psychological pressure. And so what you can do is that you should actually take up a health insurance, a good proper health insurance, so that whatever investment that you have made or that you are likely to make in the next few years does not get disrupted, right? So in order to protect your wealth, you should have a proper medical insurance which will cater to the needs or the requirements that will obviously arise out of your diseases and ailments that you may confront in coming years. So these are the two prerequisites that you must essentially fulfill before you proceed the journey of investment. Remember, you may have got your job in your 20s and may have spent your time till now without making that much of significant investment. The high time that you should begin your investment process. Remember, since you have lost a considerable amount of time, don't try to achieve a greater return in order to compensate the loss of time that you have already done. So instead of it, what you can do is that you should actually increase the corpus of money that you are going to invest throughout the next few years. So the first thing I would prescribe, had you been in your 20s, I would have asked you to go for at least 30% of your income. But since you are in your 30s and you have not as yet started your investment, so I would prescribe you to invest at least 40% of your income. So at least 40% of your income must be invested in different financial instruments, in different financial products, so that you can achieve the goal of financial independence. You have, if you are a salaried person, I will presume that you have an investable corpus of around 20,000 or so, and I will try to deduce a plan for this 20,000, which you will necessarily have. If you are a salaried person and if you are in your mid-30s, you will necessarily have an investable corpus of 20,000 or so. That you can do with regard to your investment journey is to invest in equity market, because equity is something which can give you a return which is much greater than the inflation. So if you put your money in bank, in FDs, or in different fixed assets which provide you a stipulated rate of return, you will probably not be able to outperform the rate at which your inflation grows. So the best strategy for you would be to invest in equity or equity oriented instruments which are likely to provide you a greater return than the inflation in the long run. So the first thing that I will prescribe you to do is to take up some mutual fund. I won't prescribe you to take direct stocks at this age of 30, because this is the time when you should not necessarily look for the opportunities of growing your money, because this is the time when you should also think of protecting your capital as well. So since you have not as yet invested till now, so I will ask you to take an exposure of equity oriented schemes, equity oriented instruments, and invest at least 50% of your allocation to some mutual funds. And the mutual funds which I will recommend in this regard would be a multi-cap fund. A multi-cap fund may be sufficient for your purpose. You can take up a good multi-cap fund from any of the AMCs that you are comfortable with. So take up a multi-cap fund, and this multi-cap fund will be able to generate a return of around 15 to 20% in the long run. So put in 50% of your capital in a good multi-cap fund that is able to give you a return of around 15 to 20%. Multi-cap fund, as you know, it is a kind of portfolio which covers the stocks from the large cap sector, the mid cap sector, as well as the small cap sector. So the fund manager does not have the obligation of confining himself only to a particular segment of stocks. Like fund manager has a opportunity, has an adequate opportunity of investing the money throughout the market, and he can generate an extra alpha return, probably greater than what your index would provide. So you should necessarily invest 50% of your corpus in mutual fund, and this mutual fund should be a multi-cap fund. Or secondly, if you are in your late 30s, I will deduce a different strategy for those who are in their late 30s. If you are in your late 30s, you should, out of this 50%, you should divide your corpus into equal portions. The first portion should actually be going to an index fund which replicates the performance of Nifty 50. And the second portion should necessarily go to a multi-cap fund, a good multi-cap fund that has a good track record of providing return in the range of 15 to 20% in the long run. Secondly, and with the residual 50% that you have, you will have to remember that your situation has changed a lot. Probably now you are married, you are having obligations of your wife, your children are likely to go to school, colleges in the next 10 to 12 years. So you should have an adequate preparation for this. And finally, you will probably necessarily need a house of your own, probably you will require a car. So your goals are almost defined right at this point of time. So you are standing at a particular juncture of life when you can visualize your dreams, you visualize your goals. So with a residual 50% of your investable corpus, you should actually address the specific goals that you have in front of you. Probably you may be wanting to save some money for your child's education. And if you wish to save some money for your child's education, probably your child will require this money 10 years down the line. So the best option that you will have with this in this regard would be to invest in some sort of instrument that will not give you that much of volatility, but still will be able to generate a return which is greater than the inflation. So the best option which you can look for is a gold bond. And don't buy jewelries with this money, because jewelries have their own disadvantages. You can apply for the gold bonds which are issued by the RBI, that is called the sovereign gold bonds. And these sovereign gold bonds will give you recurrent interests annually. Recurrent interest will be provided to you, and this will range from 2.5 to 3%. And if you purchase a jewelry, you won't be getting any interest out of them. So, and alongside it, if the prices of gold appreciate in the long run, you will get the kind of appreciation that happens to the gold will also be reflected in your bond value. So what you invest 20% of your investable corpus in sovereign gold bonds. That is the best way to give your portfolio a stability, because you will not be you will not be afflicted by the volatility of the market. Gold will give you the necessary stability that you will require at this point of time. 50%, I will ask you to take up some exposure of foreign markets. Foreign markets, in today's time, US market is one of the greatest domain where you can put in your money. And what I will ask you to purchase some index funds which tracks the performance of S&P 500. So you need to put in 10% of your money in some index fund which tracks the performance of S&P 500. S&P 500, as you know, it's an index which tracks the first 500 companies of listed companies of USA. And this is exactly the reason why you should actually go for S&P 500, because once you put your money in that fund, in that index fund, you are virtually investing in the first 500 listed companies of USA. And so 20% for your gold bonds, 10% for your S&P 500 index fund. So that makes the 80% allocation for your total portfolio. And with the rest of the 20%, I think with the rest of the 20%, you must do something which will be essential for you to generate some return during the time of your retirement years. So this is the fund which you require for your for building your retirement corpus. So how can you build this retirement corpus? Since you have already taken an exposure of Indian equity market and also an exposure in foreign equity market, I will ask you to invest this money in some real estate. And with regard to the real estate, I have a specific notion that real estate investment is definitely justified right at this point of time, given the kind of interest rates that are being provided, that are being offered by the banks. You will have a very viable option of selecting your real estate in the long run. But since you are in your 30s, I won't ask you to take up some loans for the purchase of real estate. If you have saved up some capital, already, try to go for a real estate investment with that capital. And I will ask you to separately allocate 20% of your residual portfolio on the real estate investments. And the real estate which you can look for in this regard would be some commercial real estate. And if you are not able to fund that much of investment, I will ask you to purchase simply a shop, a roadside shop, or a kind of small room which can cater to the requirements of becoming a ATM counter. And that is something which you can from which you can generate some sort of rental income during your retirement years. So 20% fund should necessarily be invested in some real estate instruments, real estate products, which can have the potential of providing a return during your retirement years. So to give you a summary of the entire things that we have done so far, number one, we have invested 50% of your corpus in Indian equity market, and we have refrained from direct stocks. Rather, we have invested with multi-cap equity fund that has a long track record of providing good returns of in between 15 to 20%. And we have invested in index funds, 20% of our corpus in sovereign gold bonds. We have invested 10% of our corpus in foreign equity markets, that is the market of United States of America. We have invested the rest of the 20% in some real estate products that has the capacity of generating wealth in times to come. So this is how we will go with the approach with this portfolio, right? And the second thing that I will ask you to do, and this is the most crucial thing, don't attempt to generate some extra return out of this portfolio. The fact that you have not as yet invested your money in some products will not be recompensated by attempting some extra return. Rather, you should attempt to stabilize your financial conditions, so that you can prosper in times to come, and go on to invest accordingly with this plan, keeping this plan in mind, and you will generate, I think you will generate adequate wealth. By the time you reach your 50, you will be able to generate your the return that you actually look for from these products. And if you have invested your time in this video till now, it means that you like me, and since you like me, you must be loving my videos as well. Do subscribe to my channel if you do so, and don't forget to press the notification bell, because this will keep you informed about the videos that I will be posting regarding the issues of personal finance and financial planning. Thanks for watching.